This is Shabbos, and this is Mem Zayin. The Gemara was talking about whether you're allowed to fasten clothes with certain things, and it says you're allowed to fasten with a nut. Ha be'oigez mutter, with a nut it's mutter. Mishum shahu metaltal, because you're allowed to move it on Shabbos, not muksa. Amrava de barava, asya, Rabbi Shimon ve'gamaliel Rabbi Meir. That b'mod Rabbi Meir amar davar shahu metaltal mutter. Just like Rabbi Meir says that anything we handle is mutter on Shabbos. Kain Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer davar shu metaltal mutter. So too, Rabbi Gamliel says any item that be handled is not muksa, then it can be handled on Shabbos. Zakt halacha ches. Hiketea yoytze bekal shaloi, that if a person goes out with a wooden foot, div Rabbi Yossi says fine. Rabbi Meir says it's aser. Im yesh boy base kibo kasizon tame. If he possesses if the wooden foot possesses the receptacle for rags, it is susceptible to tuma. Smoicha shaloi, any supports he has for an amputee, tamei midrash, could be susceptible to tom midrash. This is when you're leaning on something and you're tame, then you can make that tame also. Yotzin bahen b'Shabbos, but you may go out them on Shabbos and you can still go to the temple courtyard with them. Temple courtyard, you weren't allowed to go obviously with tame. You also were not allowed to go close to the base of Mikdash with shoes. And this is saying, even though it's support for someone who's an amputee, it's not considered shoes in that way, but it is considered shoes in a way they let it go out to Shabbos because you're wearing them. Kisei smacha shalai, a chair that supports him. Tamei midrash, it could be tummy midrash. Ve'en yotzei b'hem b'Shabbos, cannot go out on Shabbos. Ve'en nichson b'azara, cannot go out to the azara, because that itself is considered like an actual shoe that you can't go out with, and then you go into the Azara with. I don't know how a person who was an amputee then would go into the Azara. Maybe they carried him on a stretcher or the like, but it seems like a wheelchair or this type of support chair was not allowed. And katmin tohairois v'ein yotzei behen, and katmin atahar, but you may not go out with them on Shabbos. We're going to see exactly what that is, machlokes, and it turns out I think that it ends up being it's sort of like crutches. We're going to see that in the Gemara. Shmuel says yotzin by b'shum sandal. One may go out with a amputated foot because of sandal, because it's a shoe, and he's wearing it. When he's lost in Balazar, go to Balazar with it. So Rabbi Yanai asks the question: yotzin by b'shum sandal? You go out with it because it's a shoe? Who's sandal and sandal by Lazara? How could you go with an Azara? They know sandal, you're not allowed to go with the shoe with Azara. So I didn't say the question, but really the answer is it's not because an actual shoe, and I guess maybe this question is trying to prove it. It's not an actual shoe. The amputated person wears the prosthetic like a shoe, but the prosthetic's not a shoe. The prosthetic is being worn. Just like a sandal is being worn, so too the prosthetic is snug. It's attached to the person. It's strapped on like a sandal, so then it is something that he's wearing. It's allowed to go out on Shabbos. However, it's not an actual shoe, so therefore you're allowed to go up onto the Azara with it. Let's see what the Gemara answers. Amrab, by Ad the have a maksha al the Shmuel. Why are you asking this onto Shmuel? Kasha al damasnisin, asking the Mishnah itself that smoicha supports for an amputee. Shalai tamei midrash. They are susceptible, possible to midrash, but yotzei b'Shabbos, you go on Shabbos, v'nuskan ba'azara, and you can also go on Azara. So ask on that. That's a question that how can you go on Azara with it? If you let it go on the Shabbos, then it's like a sandal, and if it's like a sandal, then why you let it go up onto the Azara? So Amar Ramana says. Emu Seifa. So address this really close to the mission at the end that the last that Pilgad Abba Shmuel for does not differ from Abba Shmuel, because let's see what it says. Kisei Smoicha Shalai, that a chair that supports a person. So Tumei and Midrash, it's susceptible to Tumos Midrash. The Ein Yotzei Behen Shabbos, and one may not go on the Shabbos, and you cannot go to the courtyard. So there we go. Now we see the support that is susceptible to Tumah, and you can't go on Shabbos, you can't go to the courtyard. So if you're allowed to go on Shabbos because it's a sandal, then you could go onto the courtyard with it. But if you can't go on Shabbos because it's not like a sandal, now you can't go on the courtyard with it. So now this whole thing doesn't make sense. So really like this. So we're talking about you're looking at it the wrong way. It's not that it's an actual sandal, it's not being worn. So therefore it proves it. When it's being worn like a sandal, then you go out on Shabbos. However, it's not a sandal, and therefore you're allowed to go up onto to the Beis Hamikdash, onto the Temple Mount with it. That's fine. When it's not being worn like a sandal, it's just something that someone sits in and it's not strapped onto the person, so then it's acceptable tuma. Then you cannot go out on Shabbos because it's not attached to the person. So now it is either a burden or it's something that he's carrying or he's moving out in public and sort of like he's carrying in public. And you cannot go out onto the Beis Hamikdash with it. You can't go onto the Temple Mount with it because it is not in an attached appendage to him, and maybe it is like a sandal in a way because it does ride on the ground and get dirty all the time. So therefore, just like a sandal, people should remove their shoes because it's not attached to them. Shoes could be taken off. So this chair is in the same way. So at the end, that's what it seems like the Mishnah is talking about. And Katamin Tohirin V'Yetzu and Katamin Atoharim will not go out with them. So Man Katamin Tohirin, what does it mean a Katamin Tohirin? Rabavu, who says that Hundus Katmin, because they're Hundus Katmin, which means Chamara the Yada, it's a donkey for his hand. So some of the Farshim over here, they try to say that it's some sort of contraption. It looks like a donkey. It's something that he can carry in his hands or something that he carries on his hands. But I think more likely what it's talking about is, since the entire mission is talking about amputees and prosthetics, this is probably crutches. It's a donkey for the hands, meaning it's support. What does a donkey do? A donkey supports somebody. So it's support for the hands. You put it underneath the shoulders, right? That's considered, well, not the hands itself, but it's under the shoulders, basically. So it's the hands. It's the whole thing is a lot of times referred to as the hands, and you hold on to it, and it supports a person. It's a donkey. It's support for the hands. It's basically crutches. That's what it is. It's crutches. That's what it's talking about. Zokt halacha tes. Habanim yaitzin biksharim. Young boys may go out with knots. Ubnei malacha and princes bezoigin, and princes may go out with bells. And every person really, not only a prince, but really it's every single person. We're just saying that it's princes because they're usually go out with. Obviously, the bells we're talking about are those that do not have the bell piece inside to make a noise, but it's the outer part of the bell. Yaitzin b'tzeisas hachargoil, and one may go out with the eggs of a chargoil, which is a type of grasshopper, kosher grasshopper. Ubishain shel shuel, and the tooth of a fox. Ubisamser hatzolov, and with the nail of the one who's hanged. And we're going to talk about exactly what that is. Mishum refuah. These all are refuah things. So clearly they're not holding them in their hand. They're attached to them in some way on some sort of way to heal the person. The Rabbi says like this. Rabbi Meir ices them not because of Shabbos, also during the week, Mishum Darke Moiri, because this is the way that they're going to do these incantations, just like spells. This is against what it says in Vayikra, that a person shouldn't use witchcraft. So that's what he says. Zak the Gemara is going to explain. Habanim Yaitzin Bikrushim, that young boys will go out with knots. This is Bikishrei Fua. This is knots with a madder plant, and they're hung around their neck, and there's some sort of curative process in them. Uvnei Malacha and Bezoigin, and princes go out with bells, again, also probably for some healing reason. Rabbi Zera says, B'zaygin, B'tzavaroi, when it's bells around the neck, so Mavchalda, what do you mean Chaldaim, Bekhanam Aniyim? They're talking about whether it's Adiyah children, Bekhanat Yashirim, or whether it's rich children, because certainly adults cannot go out with the bells around their neck, even if it's for full purposes. They can't go out these around their neck because that is not allowed. That's carrying. Rabbi Ila says, B'zaygin, Bekisusai, with bells that are attached to the cloak. So really means everyone else. It's really attached to their cloak. Because it would be strange for the Mishnah to say, you know what, children go out with bells, but not adults. But children also probably can do a lot of things if you're talking about they're not in the age of chinuch, and they're not in the age of doing mitzvahs. So why would the Mishnah say that Ketanim could do it? It's a vadik. Ketanim could do things, but not in the age of chinuch, and they're not in the age of mitzvahs. They could do certain things. Really, it must be talking about that's really attached to their cloak, and therefore both princes that are children, and also adults and children. But it could be this remedy taka is only for children. That's what we were talking about. I got really this is what princes would do as some sort of remedy for something, and if they had the custom to go out with it, or they had the familiarity to go out with it, whereas anyone really could do it, and because attached to the clothes, it could be adults, it could be children, but really the refuah was meant for children and apparently for the rich. Zog the Gemara weiter. Masnisa pligi al Rab Zera. The Mishnah argues on Rabbi Zera, Yaitzahu Adam Bezagin Bichususai. A person may go out with bells attached to his clothing, but he may not go out with bells around his neck. So how could you say it's around his neck? Again, why he's talking about katanim? Tzarachin. But generally speaking, we're talking about when it just makes sense. It's attached to his clothing, but it's the children that go out with these remedies. Yaitzin beveitzas achargoil. So we can go out with the egg of a chargoil. Tav lid ududna. So this is good for earache. Oh, b'shein shalshuel, and in the tooth of a fox. Tav l'shena. So apparently you put it in your mouth, and it helps with sleeping disorders. I don't exactly know where you're carrying it. You're putting it in your gums, you're putting it in your mouth. I don't know where you're holding this exactly. But somehow you're holding it, and you let it go out with it because it helps with sleep disorders. Why going out with something when it's helping you with sleep disorder? Perhaps they thought maybe carrying it around the whole time will help with the sleep disorder at night, and you have to have it even when you're awake. Or maybe you carry it because you're going somewhere where you're going to go to sleep, but then you can't carry it in a pocket. You have to carry it. It's obviously held somewhere. I don't know where on the body these were inserted or held or attached to, because clearly they're not in their hands. Ubusamser hatzolov, or the nail of what was hanged, tav la'avrisa, and this is for some sort of fever. What is a nail of the one who's hanged? Some interpret it that it is the gallows where someone who was chayiv misa would then be hung until nightfall, like we see in Devarim. But I think it's more like the nail of the person who's hanged. I think it's actual the nail. We're talking about remedies and these heebie-jeebie remedies and these things that people believe in then. I don't know how the nail is going to help with a fever or with anything. It was probably the nail of the person who's hung, and maybe that had some sort of spiritual healing process or something. Got to look into ancient spiritual remedies. Talking about right there. Is Tanai Umachalife. So there's a ton of diversity opinions, and really says Rabbi Yossi is the one who says that it's not allowed, or Meir is the one who said it's allowed. Rabbi Chanina b'Shem Rabbi Yechanan said nope, the mission is correct the way it is. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Avu b'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, he says Kol Shehum Rape Ein Boy Mishum Darkei Amari. Anytime you're doing a healing, it's not Derech Amari. So any type of healing you let to do, it's not Derech Amari, which is very good. Because there are a lot of things that people would say over time that is Derech HaMayri, which comes out to be followed by science, and it's good that it's not Derech HaMayri. Like, for instance, injecting yourself with poison is Derech HaMayri. But the truth is, if you know what's going on, the processes, it's an antiviral, or it's an antibacterial, or it's a vaccine. So it seems like it's strange. You're putting on this pad on the eye for whatever reason, and it's moist with some cream, but the cream turns out has healing processes. So what would seem like Derech HaMayri, now if you understand the reason for the refuah, so then you understand it. So to say, in general speaking, that for refuah, it's not Derech HaMayri, it's very good. Because until you understand it, do it. And once you understand it, great, now you understand it. Obviously, things that just have no technical connection, yes, those are questions like you want to put a nail of a hanged person on. Why a nail of a hanged person opposed to anyone else? How could that possibly have scientific processes? Who knows? Dargi Vas. So they would chant this Dargi Vas. So Mishum Darkei Amari. This is Mishum Darkei Amari. This is the way the Goyim do, and you can't do it. Rabbi Yehuda says Mishum the Goyim Avodah Zarah, because Dagan Avodah Zarah. Dagan Avodah Zarah is written in Shmuel. The Rosh Dagan Ushtei Kapois Yadav, that Dagan has fallen, and Dagan's head, and his two palms on his hands. It's a pasuk there, and it talks about Dagan, it's Avodah Zarah, and therefore you can't chant the incantation, obviously, to Avodah Zarah. Dainu deny. Now the Gemara is going to go more into different things that are Darkei Amari. May the barrels of deny be strengthened. Mishum Darkei Amari, Darkei Amari. Where do you see that? That Rabbi Yehuda says it's Mishum done Avodah Zarah. It's because of the Avodah Zarah that was by done. The Imruchai Elekei done Lav, you can't say lav, mishum darkei mayri, it's because darkei mayri. Rabbi Yehuda says, mishum vani sarah, v'yemer le'el sur, menu, v'daz, darkei loichotsu. Because they said to Hashem, leave us, and we have no desire. They said lav, two things to Hashem they do not want. Today, Rabbi Chanina, he taught a brisa that amad etzem big rhinoi. If a bone is stuck in one's throat, noisein mois hamin al roisha. You take the bone of the same animal, the same food, you put on his head. The ain by mishum darkei mayri, and you also, and it's not the way of darkei mayri. I have a better remedy. Okay, encourage a person to cough. Call atzala. Have the person eat bread and take a drink, and keep encouraging him to cough. And if he eventually passes out, or he doesn't pass out, he can't talk anymore, can't cough anymore, but he's still awake, you do the Heimlich on him, which is what used to be called the Heimlich, and now I think it's just called thrusts. You do those thrusts on him, and if he does pass out, do CPR. But really, don't put a bone on his head. Call Tzala, encourage him to cough, have him drink, and try to eat some challah bread to help it go down. Tane Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Loi Tanachashu v'loi da'inenu. You should not rely on occurrences, and you should not calculate times. This is from Vayikra. Afal pi she'ein nachash yesh siman. Even though there's no sanction for looking for occurrences, but there is for following a sign. However, after 3 signs, then it's permitted. How do we know? Because we know from Yaakovini. Yaakovini said it. Va'ani b'vay b'padna ram mesa alai Rachel. I came from Padna Ram, and Rachel died. Yosef nanu. Yosef is no longer with us. V'Shimon nanu, and Shimon is no longer with us. Then Binyamin ticha. When you want to take Binyamin, This is from Bereshis, Parshas Mikatz. So he had 3 signs, then you'll have to look at the 3 signs. But a single sign, or to see like, a bird flying, or a bird looking this way, or the rain falling here, or a flower turn that way, those you should not do.